There's another aspect about this level of the gut. This level of the gut is also, as I said, it's the level of our deepest fear, but it's also the level of what I call personal will. It's what I want and the way I want it to be. It's that which wants the world to be exactly as it wants. It wants situation to be as it wants. At this level, the personal will, yes, the personal will is ultimately illusion, which is why it's so frustrating to have personal will trying to control and dictate events. But nonetheless, the illusion of personal will ultimately must be faced and must be dealt with. It calls for the deepest surrender, the deepest devotion and sincerity to truth itself. That ultimately, true realization, true enlightenment comes through a complete relinquishing of personal will, a complete letting go. Of course, this often generates fear in our limited sense of self, in our illusory sense of self. Because our illusory sense of self can only interpret letting go of personal will as traumatic, as if it's going to open us up to danger, as if I let go of personal will, I'll never get what I want. The world will never be the way I want it to be. Nothing will ever happen the way I want it to be. But ultimately what we see is these sort of conclusions are just thoughts. It's thinking along the lines that we're taught to think. That actually there is no such thing as a personal will. But until we see that there's really no such thing as the personal will, the experience of willfulness is something we must encounter. This is where we start to encounter the wisdom of being disillusioned. When we feel disillusioned with something, it means we've coming to the end of our willfulness. And it's only by coming to the end of our willfulness does transformation happen. Those who've been addicted to drugs or alcohol and have recovered, you all know that a very important component is coming to the end of your personal will, to realizing that you can't change your addiction through willfulness, through trying to do it through will, that it's not strong enough, that you can't do it. And somehow when an addict bottoms out, bottoming out really means that their personal will has broken down. And when personal will has broken down, there's a whole other force that can come rushing into our system. It's the force of spirit itself that can come rushing into our system, can now become operational. Because we're no longer avoiding the onrush of spirit, of a totally different energy coming through us. We're no longer avoiding it through grasping at personal will. But understand one thing, the trajectory of our spiritual lives, the direction that it's all inextricably going into, is no matter what our path, whether it's a progressive path or a direct path, no matter what our path is, devotional or otherwise, the trajectory of spiritual awakening leads us to a place of surrender. Ultimately, that's the name of the spiritual game. Ultimately, everything we do spiritually is leading us to a spontaneous state of surrender, of letting go. That's where it all leads, no matter what the path is, no matter what the practice is. And once you know that, you'll notice that each step along the way is a next opportunity to surrender. It may take effort to get there. It may take effort to get you to the point where you're willing to let go into grace. But ultimately, the whole of spirituality boils down to a letting go of the illusion of separate self, a letting go of the way we think the world is, the way we think it should be. of literally the willingness to lose our world. That willingness is the surrender. That willingness is the letting go. And each of us has to find what that letting go means for us, what we need to let go of. Whether it's easy or difficult doesn't matter in the slightest. It's the letting go that's ultimately important.